Shalom family, shalom gods. I'm coming again with another video today. And today we're going to be talking about God and the potter's wheel. I'm at work, guys, and I got about 40 minutes before I get off, and I had all my work finished. I said, well, let me sit down and make this video before I get home, because when I get home, my kids going to be excited to see me. They're not going to leave me alone, and I'm not going to get a chance to do this video. And I'll probably fall asleep early because I work today and I probably won't be able to stay up late. So I figured I can sit down and do it right now unless somebody calls. Let's hope they don't. So I wanted to do this video today. The title of this video is God and the Potter's Wheel. So we're going to talk about the Potter's Wheel. If any of you guys want to subscribe to Sister Ruth Abbey, she's talked about this too. Now, the reason why I wanted to do this video is because I started writing a book, family, and I think I'm going to title it The Greatest Secret Ever Hidden. The God of the Bible is a woman. You know, they have the greatest secret ever told or kept or something. Mine is going to be the greatest, whatever the book that's already out isn't. They also have one called The Hidden Hand, and we know what all of this stuff is about, even though they probably don't give you the full truth in these books. So I decided to write a book and put the full truth. Now, I started writing this book a few months ago, and I kind of got discouraged, guys. I'm going to tell you, I kind of got discouraged. I'm like, I don't know if I'm right. You know what I'm saying? I don't want to mislead people, so I took a break from it. I said, God, please just, lead me. And with all the information that I've been getting lately, I just know I'm not wrong. And last night I was watching a video, and the video was basically telling me, it was saying, write this down and write that down. I'm supposed to be a writer, okay? I'm a scribe, and God has told me that I'm a scribe before, okay? So I started writing this book. So the reason why I wanted to bring this video to you guys is because I was writing this chapter of the book last night, and I said, well, it would be good to do a video about this because we haven't done a video about it. Sister Ruth Abbey has mentioned it in her videos, but she hasn't done a video dedicated wholly to this subject. But I have heard her mention it, okay? So we're going to be talking about the potter's wheel and how the potter's wheel, and let's get some scriptures. The potter's wheel is actually a birth stool, okay? So I'm writing this chapter in my book, and it's called God and the Potter's Wheel, okay? God is a woman in the potter's wheel, okay? So this is the chapter that I'm working on now, and I figured I would share it with you guys. So we can see that the word for wheel is 70, and it's oban, which is a wheel, a disc, a birth stool, a wheel. And then we go down and we see wheel, stool, from the same as Eben, a pair of stones, a potter's wheel, or a midwife stool. So we are told that the potter's wheel is a midwife stool. She forms the clay in her belly. Okay, now, of course, they have this as a masculine noun, but we know it's not a masculine noun because when we go to the word that it comes from, Eben, it comes from a feminine noun. And this noun means a stone, a cornerstone, differing weights, hailstones, jeweler, lapis lazuli, line, a plumb, a rock, sling stone, stone cutter, stone mason, stone weight. Now, how God showed me that I was a scribe is through the goddess Shisha. And we have the same name. If you take off the first and last letter of her name, it's Isha. And we've talked about Isha. Well, Shisha was a scribe, okay? She was the chief scribe, and she performed the laying of the line rituals, okay? So it's not, I don't find it funny that the word goes to line or plumb line. Stonemasons. I've recently just did a Facebook status where I talked about the Masons were women, and Freemasons just means free of women, okay? So Freemasons, they are free of women. This is why they don't allow women into Freemasonry, not the real Freemasonry. They don't allow women into it. They have a few little fake offshoot groups where they let women in, but for the most part, they don't let women in. And when it first started, they didn't let women in at all. Okay, so so the real masons, the real stonemasons are the women. Mason means to build a stone, diverse weights. Now, this word build, when we go to it, means to have children. Builders, building, builds, built, construct, constructed, fashion, fortify, fortifying, have children, made, obtain children, rebuild, rebuilding, rebuilt, rebuilt, restored, set, surely built. So we can see that the potter's wheel is giving us a depiction of God birthing children, a woman on a birth stool birthing children. If you guys don't know how that look, I made a Facebook post about this, so let me pull it up. If you guys don't know what the birthing stool looks like, if you guys don't know exactly what I'm talking about, I always do that. I'll be scrolling so fast and it just keep going. Okay, here we go. The potter's wheel is the birthing stool. But now, O Lord, thou art our mother. We are the clay, and thou art the potter. And we are all the work of thine hand. Now we know Proverbs 31 say, let her own works praise her in the gate. Her work is her children and her husband, okay? A wheel. So we went through this definition, but let's take a look at these pictures. And then we got this is a birthing chair. Okay, so this is what it's talking about when it's talking about the potter's wheel. Now, it's also it's talking about pottery. And when we talk about pottery, we need to understand that women were the ones who created pottery. So this is definitely referencing us that God is a woman, okay? So let's just get into some of the history of pottery, okay? Let's start here. So it says female technology, the identity of Neolithic potters. If the object of research is Neolithic ceramics, it would seem that the researcher is at loss when it comes to illuminating social aspects of the manufacture of pottery. In archaeological inquiry, the artisans always remain invisible. Okay, invisible. What is that? Hidden. Okay, the hidden wisdom. Even though their identities are crucial in the reconstruction of social relations. Let's go back to that word. What was it? Reconstruct. What did we get? Hold up. Wait, let's go to it. Sorry, y'all. But now it means to what? Rebuild. Rebuild. Surely built. Rebuild. Okay, fortifying. Constructed. Building. Wisdom builds her house. Okay, so it say, even though their identities are crucial in the reconstruction of social relations. Thus, if we wish to identify the gender and social standing of artisans in the deeper layers of history, we must turn to ethno-archaeological and anthropological research. A number of ethno-archaeological and anthropological studies confirm the conclusion that pottery can be considered a female occupation in non-industrialized societies. However, it seems that a rough gender-based division of production to non-specialized female and specialized male is too simplified. According to this point of view, women engage in pottery only when they have no other work to do, be it household chores or agricultural labor, and they produce pottery only to meet the needs of their own household. Ethno-archaeological research, however, shows that women can indeed become specialized artisans. The specialization of women can be observed in three forms: in those communities where only some households engage in production of pottery, in specialized communities, and in communities where female pottery makers belong to specific social groups. Based on anthropological research, we can assume that the adoption of pottery is directly linked to the gender-based division in everyday activities. Beliefs, rituals, and taboos connected to the production of pottery, which have been ethnographically documented, and wherein the production of pottery is equated with a shift in the life cycle, birth and death, only to serve to vouch for the identity of the artisan in the earliest ceramic communities. Now let's continue. Let's look at something else, because they're telling us that females created pottery. Okay, let's read this woman's article I was looking at earlier. Woman invented agriculture, pottery, and weaving, and created Neolithic religion by Carol P. Christ. Wow, I didn't even read her name. When I look at the 2 chapters on goddess history in my book, Rebirth of the Goddess, there is very little I would change, but there is new evidence I will add. Before discussing that, I would like to underscore 2 important points I made in discussing goddess history that are often overlooked or ignored by other writers. The first is that women were likely inventors of 3 new technologies at the beginning of the Neolithic age. Agriculture, because they were the gatherers of plants and the preppers of plant foods. So who is the gatherers? Who is the angels that's coming together? Okay now. Pottery, primarily used for food storage and preparation, and weaving, woman's role in almost all traditional societies. The second is that so-called age of the goddess is not a more primitive or unconscious stage of culture that needed to be superseded or overthrown by more evolved or more rational patriarchal warrior cultures. Cultural theorists like the archetypal psychologist Carl Jung assert that the feminine represents the unconscious and non-rational ways of knowing, such as intuition. From this it follows for them that the age of the goddess was the age of unconsciousness. This sounds good to some women and even to some feminists who have experienced aspects of so-called rational, philosophical, theological, and scientific traditions as dogmatic, authoritative, and wrong. Wrong about women and wrong when they exclude other than narrowly defined rational ways of knowing. However, there are important reasons to reject Jung's theory. The theory that earlier, more feminine or pre-patriarchal cultures are unconscious or pre-rational has been used by Jung and his followers to justify the overthrow of earlier cultures by patriarchal warrior groups in order to allow humanity to develop so-called rational ways of thinking which are identified as masculine. That the so-called rational men of these cultures were warlike, subordinated women, seized other people's lands, and held slaves is rarely counted against their alleged superiority. Moreover, the theory that the pre-patriarchal goddess cultures of the Neolithic can be categorized as unconscious in no way accounts for the technological inventions that define the Neolithic era. Women did not wake up one morning with the intuition that if they planted seeds and watered them, crops would grow. The invention of agriculture involved a long process of observation and testing. Nor did women invent pots when they unconsciously fiddled with snake coils, or invent firing when they accidentally dropped a pot into a burning fire. These things may have happened, but they would have led to the invention of fire, pottery, only if someone thought about it, what had occurred and made a conscious decision to test the ideas that occurred in her mind, and then to repeat the process until it was perfected. The same is true of the even more counterintuitive idea that wool or flax could be spun into thread and that thread could be woven into cloth. The invention of agriculture and pottery and weaving came about through a long process of observation of nature, scientific observation, and trial and error, scientific experimentation. Intuition was probably involved as modern scientists are increasingly admitting their own discoveries, but it was complemented by what we must call rational thinking and scientific methods. Women have never been mired in the unconscious or limited to non-rational ways of knowing. We have always used both rational and non-rational ways of knowing in order to improve the condition of lives for ourselves and our families. The fact that women were the likely inventors of agriculture, pottery, and weaving has important implications for understanding Neolithic religion. Women would have encoded the techniques they discovered in song and story and dance in order to pass their knowledge down to the next generations. This is the way we plant the seeds, plant the seeds, plant the seeds. This is the way we plant the seeds. Okay. In other words, women were not only the inventors of agriculture, pottery, and weaving, they were also the creators of the religious rites related to their inventions, such as planting and harvesting rituals that would have been central in Neolithic cultures. If women invented agriculture, pottery, and weaving, it's strange to believe, to imagine, as it is usually assumed, that male priests or shamans were the primary creators of Neolithic religion. Though I believe that women were the creators of Neolithic religion when I wrote Rebirth, I am even more certain about this now. In 1930s, Marija Gimbutas recorded more than 5,000 folk songs in Lithuania countryside, many of them sung only by women, and most of them having to do with planting and harvesting, birth, and marriage. Research on living matriarchal societies, such as the Mingakubu and the Mosuo, shows that women orchestrate and pass on major rituals to do with planting, birth, and coming of age. Many of these rituals involve special foods and clothing, a reflection and celebration of women's work and intelligence. Okay, now I got a lot of stuff I can read, but for the sake of just a short video, I'm just going to read a little bit because this is long. Okay, this is long. I was researching for my book last night. I wrote a lot of this chapter, and then I was researching because I want to go into the history of it for the readers so they can actually understand. Okay, so let's just read a little bit of this. It says, it has been the assumption of the modern world that the work that dealt with great physical strength and technical expertise was solely man's work. Ceramics is one of those fields that commands the integration of strength, technical mastery, and artistic imagination. Ceramics has been regarded as a man's art in many cultures. Man produced most of the pottery in China, Japan, Korea, Greece, and Rome. In the late 19th century, Europe and the United States, women emerged onto the ceramic scene and art potteries as decorators, painting surfaces with beautifully executed images, while men produced the forms either by hand or poured molds. However, during ancient times, it was women who worked the clay. Our story begins during the prehistoric ice age around 27,000 BP, before the present era, in a small section of land in what is known as Czechoslovakia. In this frozen tundra, there existed a green oasis void of ice. A clan lived there with a female shaman that produced kiln fire ceramic sculptures that we now call the Venus figurines. Her kiln had an underground flue. Let me bring this up because this is hard to read this small. That was fueled by bones. This firing technique created the rich black carbon surface on the beautiful 6-inch forms. To imagine a woman firing a kiln almost 30,000 years ago is a phenomenal concept to grasp, but there she was, breathing in the cool night, listening to the sounds of air being forced through a flue, and concentrating on the day's work. Sound familiar? She was the beginning of woman's illustrious endeavor in clay. Illustrious endeavor in clay. Women have always been capable of producing high-quality ceramic work. Many cultures existed where women solely produced elegantly coiled pottery while men took care of the homestead. The North and South American Indians, okay, y'all know we didn't talk about the Indians because we know the Israelites as Indians, and the Neolithic Middle Eastern cultures provide much evidence to this distinction of roles. In this society, women were the pot makers, creating utensils for the home life. Their job was essential to the sustenance of their families, clans, and homesteads. Pottery was used for eating, cooking, and storing of foodstuffs. For many societies, ceramics ware was also a source. Sorry, it's hard to read this one. I got to keep scrolling all the way across the screen. of trade and income. The Neolithic cultures, 10,000 to 2000 BPE, elevated this agrarian system into a complex way of living. In the midst of this utilitarian focus, our ancient potters exhibited a spectacular imagination and creative sensibility that produced artfully decorated ware equal to modern day artists. With the invention of the potter's wheel around 6000 BPE, man began to take over the production of pottery, which slowly evolved into a mass production business. The onset of machinery brought about the demise of handmade work and the Borgianing, I don't know what that word is, and the Borgianing industrialized world took hold. Okay, I'm gonna have to look that word up because I don't even know what it means. I don't think I never seen it before. If I have, I'm probably pronouncing it wrong because sometimes you know words, but you ain't never seen them. So you'd be like, oh, I knew what that was. Okay. As the centuries advanced, men routinely produced the ceramics. Women were basically denied most opportunities to work in clay. Women had to be extremely unique in order to break into this man's field. As the 19th century emerged, a new way of thinking was on the horizon, and women were anxious to be represented and contribute their unique viewpoint. Women eagerly made their mark in the ceramic field, as this period witnessed a substantial movement in women's contribution to ceramics. This lecture historically traces the accomplishments of women ceramics and their prominent position in the ceramic field. Now, we ain't going to read all of this because it's a lot. I just wanted to show y'all that women were the dominant. They were the ones who invented pottery. So when we're talking about God as the potter, and we can see that the potter's wheel is a birthing stool, then we can understand that God is definitely depicting herself as a woman giving birth, a woman shaping the clay in the womb, right? And we are showed this, and let's just pull up some scriptures on the potter, because I'm going to wrap this video up here in a second. Before I formed thee in the belly, I knew thee, and before thou camest forth out of the womb, I sanctified thee. For thou hast possessed my reins. Hold on. And the Lord God formed man of the dust of the ground and breathed into his nostrils the breath of life, and man became a living soul. But now, O Lord, thou art our mother, we are the clay, and thou art potter, and we are all the work of thy hand. O house of Israel, cannot I do with you as this potter, saith the Lord? Behold, as the clay is in the potter's hand, so are ye in my hand, O house of Israel. Nay, but, O man, who art thou that repliest against God? Shall the thing formed say to her that formed it, why hast thou made me thus? So who is forming the clay? When you are born, you are formed by your mother in her womb. She is the one who forms the clay. Okay. So it say, nay, but, O man, who art thou that repliest against God? Shall the thing formed say to her that formed it, why hast thou made me this? Should the thing formed say of her that formed it? But in a great house there are not only vessels of gold and silver, but also of wood and earth, and some honor and some to dishonor. If a man therefore purge himself from these, he shall be a vessel unto honor, sanctified and meet for the master's use, and prepare unto every good work. Okay, so they didn't really give us some good scriptures about the potter. But y'all can see what I'm saying. As the clay is in the potter's hand to fashion it at her pleasure, so man is in the hand of her that made him, to render to them as liketh him best. Hold on, I don't know if I read that right. As the clay is in the potter's hand to fashion it at her pleasure, so man is in the hand of her that made him, to render to them as liketh her best. Okay, that liketh her best. So, and that's Ecclesiastes 3:13. I was born in Detroit, Michigan, which is area code 313. It's 2:17, guys, and my husband probably outside waiting for me because I get off in 13 minutes. So I'm going to go ahead and end this video right here. I just wanted to bring y'all a little bit of information about God is a woman and the potter's wheel. Okay. Shalom, family. Shalom, gods. Till we meet again.